Jennifer Bucholtz, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
You
Looking
know, I'm
forward to
gonna have
our
to,
discussion.
yeah, I'm gonna have to start out. I've been looking forward to this, by the way, like a lot. This is such fascinating stuff to me. I love cold case stuff. I love, true crimey kind of stuff. And, looking at your pedigree, I'm like, holy cow, you've done a lot of different things. So that's really cool. But first order of business is I have to thank Vic Ferrari over at NYPD through the Looking Glass podcast. I heard you on his show and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to interview Jen. This is
Yeah,
awesome.
he's great.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. I love his podcast. He's a good friend. We routinely, swap guests, etc. So it's nice to have somebody you can do that with. So,
Definitely.
yeah. So let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up and what did your childhood look like?
I grew up on the West Coast in California. I don't really claim it anymore because I haven't lived there since I was 18, so don't judge. Um,
Did you surf?
nice to
Yeah,
visit.
I see you surfing. Where's there surfing?
Yeah, I did love the beach, but
Yeah.
it's not really my type of climate. And anyways, I couldn't afford to live there even if I wanted to.
Oof,
But
I don't know how anybody does it, to tell you the
it's nice
truth.
to visit. So
Yes, absolutely.
grew up there, just normal childhood, graduated high school and then went off to college in Arizona
What do
and
your
did
mom
my
and
undergrad in criminal justice. So
what do your mom and dad do for a living?
my mom was a registered nurse, and my dad was one of the very first employees of IBM. And
Oh,
he,
wow. Okay.
yeah, in Palo Alto. Yep, he was in their first little storefront office.
Wow.
He had no idea what computer programming was. He just answered an ad in the newspaper
No
and ended
kidding. Wow.
yeah, ended up doing his entire career at IBM. So that's
That
pretty
is
neat.
that is super cool. So you
Yeah,
definitely have some smart genes on mom and dad's side
I'd
and
like to think so. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. A little more than the average bear, let's say that. I would think. And your mom, nurses, God bless them, that's a service
Yes.
oriented profession or excuse me vocation more than
Yeah.
anything else.
Yes.
So you go to college, you're majoring in criminal justice. What did you think the end game was going to be with that?
I really, in my mind, I went through a lot of different ideas. Like for a long time, I was interested in the DEA for some reason in drug enforcement. And then that kind of dropped off. And I started getting more interested in the investigation side, like homicide type stuff. But
Hmm.
when you're young, it's like you don't really know how to get yourself to where you need to be. Like I always tell people, my career's been a very meandering, wandering path to end up where I am. But um, I wasn't sure. So out of college, I needed a job. So I ended up
Right.
applying to the state prison system in Arizona and got a job with
Yuck.
them as a correctional officer
Oh,
in a,
oh,
in a maximum security prison. So I did that
really?
for
What was
4 years.
that like?
Boring,
You were a babysitter.
really boring because the inmates, they're locked up. I mean, pretty much 24/7. And most of them were in single person cells. So there's actually people think, oh, maximum security, it's so scary. I mean, it's actually very low risk. Um, but there's a really funny story if you want to hear it. I
Yes,
was
please.
handing out mail one night because you have to do everything for them. You deliver their
Right.
meals, their laundry, their mail, their commissary, everything. And and so you've got someone up in the control room running the doors for you if you're down on the floor. And I always like being on the floor because you're moving around all day and like you're not just sitting in a chair. So I would always try to be the one down on the floor. And I got along with inmates really well. I was just very fair. I wasn't a jerk.
Sure.
I didn't let them get away with anything, but I was just very fair across the board. So I go in the pod one night and there's 8 cells per pod, and I'm handing out mail through the bars to the first couple of cells, and I get to the third cell and the inmate leaps out of the door right in front of me. The person upstairs, I forgot to shut his door before I went in there.
Oh boy.
And anyways, we laughed it off. I just like played it cool. I'm like, get back in your cell. And I looked up above and I'm like, can you please close the door? And the inmate told me later, he's like, and my maiden name's Gladstone, but he's like, Gladstone, like if you weren't so cool, I could have done something to you. I'm like, I know, but that's why, I am the way I am. So, anyways, we just laughed it off, but it did get my heart pumping for a second. So
Yes, that would
because
do
you're
the
not
trick.
armed, you can't be armed, right? All we had is
Right.
mate. So it's like me against this 6'2" guy if it came down to it. But Anyways, it was
Yeah,
an interesting job, but it was pretty boring,
it's
very mundane, and there's really no room for upward movement. I mean, you can become a
right.
sergeant or whatever, but the job doesn't really change. You're still in the prison all day long. So I
Yeah,
was like, yeah,
that's
that's this is not going to be for me.
no, and
So
usually the pay isn't so great
no,
compared to
it was
traditional law
terrible.
enforcement. Yeah.
Yeah,
The pay isn't great, the risk is high, and the boredom
yeah,
is, and that's part of the risk too, is you're so bored you become
hmm
complacent. You know,
exactly. Yeah,
that's where you get into trouble.
yeah,
And but I worked with a lot of officers and have interviewed a lot of officers that were in corrections, to start out. And I think
hmm
it's a great building block because you learn how to talk
sure.
to people.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
if you were that guy or gal that got sand kicked in their face at the beach and you just wanted to grow up and just be a big old bully and whatever, you're going to have a long, hard career, in
yes,
law enforcement or corrections or whatever, because, like you were saying, it's like that inmate knew, hey, she's cool. I'm
yeah,
not going to let people get away with BS, but
yeah,
I'm not going to go out of my way to make your life harder
exactly. Yeah,
just because I can.
yeah,
So they pick up on that. They really do. And on the
they do.
street, same thing.
Sure.
It's
They
like,
have nothing else to do.
yeah,
So
exactly, exactly. So you do the prison guard thing, then where did you go?
Then that's when I really started getting the idea in my head. I wanted to go FBI, be a
Okay.
special agent, and I was particularly interested in criminal profiling. But, I talked to them like to a recruiter or whatever. They're like, yeah, I mean, you have a degree and stuff. You don't really have any experience. We don't really count working in a prison as something that's applicable. And they also, said if you have an advanced degree, that will help you too. So I, I considered a lot of different options, but I decided I applied to the forensic psychology program at John Jay College in New York,
Hmm.
and I got accepted. So I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna go that route. And so I ended up moving to New York, starting my master's there. And the first semester, I hated it. I was like, this is not for me. I'm thinking criminal profiling stuff, right? And it was all just like incompetency testing in court and the insanity defense. And I'm like, oh my
Oh,
gosh, this is not the type of psychology I want to do.
right.
So I switched to criminal justice because it was the closest thing at the time that interested me. They didn't have their forensic science program like they do now. So did the criminal justice degree, and that had some good classes. Like there was a criminal profiling class included in that, and I actually learned, or my instructor, my professor was a former profiler with the FBI, so like
Hmm.
obviously loved that class.
Sure.
And there's a couple investigations focused courses too that I really liked. And so I was also thinking at the time, like, I wonder where I could intern, like maybe I can get an internship to get some experience. And so I just cold called the medical examiner's office, and they were like, what? Like, we don't do that. And they said, I don't know, I'll put you through to the head of the death investigation unit. And that guy was the same way. He's like, you want to do what? Like,
Yeah.
nobody wants to intern here and see dead bodies. And I was like, well, I think I'd be interested. So he's like, well, come on down and we'll have a conversation and see what we can do. And so I did. This was in 1999, so digital photography was just coming around.
Mm.
And he goes, so we got this. He brings out this Kodak box with a digital camera, this big old clumsy thing. We got this new camera. Nobody knows how to use it. We're using Polaroids. And he's like, how about you come intern with the investigators and you can learn the digital photography side, figure out how to use this camera and teach them, and you can go to the scenes with them and take the photos. And I'm like, sure, that sounds great. I was like foot in the door, whatever.
Sure.
So that's how I started with them, but I was their first intern. And I heard now they have like a whole like official program and stuff. But yeah, they all thought I was crazy for wanting to
Yeah.
be
If
around dead bodies, but
if there are college kids listening or watching this, please do internships. I
yes,
I did one with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department, and that changed the trajectory of my life. I knew
yeah,
I wanted to be a cop, but that sealed the deal. And I'm like, there's no other place I want to be a cop. This is like nonstop action. Yeah, you're young, you're a
yeah,
kid, and you're like, this is the if I would do this for free. I would pay to do this.
Yeah,
You know, don't tell
I
them that,
know.
but this is the best stuff ever. So yeah, if you get a chance, and it's also a good way to kind of say, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. This isn't exactly
Exactly.
what I
Yeah.
thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, there's a lot of boring stuff going on here. It's not 24/7, like car chases and shootouts and
Hmm.
whatever else, so it might be a good thing. But yeah, if you can, please, 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 definitely do it. Now, when you were in New York, were you working like little side jobs while you were doing the internship, or
No,
did
I
you have time?
actually I had saved up some money
Hmm.
through other jobs and stuff. And I used that and I did take out one student loan, I think, to help
Oh,
pay. I mean, I could have worked, but those master's levels courses, they're pretty intense. And I was
sure.
taking four at a time, I believe. So and I went to summer school too. I was trying to just do my
Just get it
master's
over with.
in the shortest
Yeah.
amount of time possible. So I wasn't really working, but I did the internship, which of course was unpaid. But I tell everybody it's like the best unpaid job I ever had in my life. It was fascinating. And that's really what I think sparked my interest in death investigation and homicide and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it was
Now,
so valuable.
I have to ask, did you meet Barbara Butcher?
I did. I
Uh,
interned with her. Not that
Oh,
she won't remember me. I know this, but
she might.
yes, she was one of the investigators I worked with.
I absolutely love her. I loved her book.
Mhm.
I had her on the podcast. It's like I've I'm probably getting close to 300 interviews with like bonus
Wow.
stuff or whatever, and she is definitely like in the at the top of people that I'd want to just go sit down and have a coffee with, and just
Yes,
just
but
chat. Because she's
yeah,
so fascinating.
she's so smart.
Yeah, she's an incredible person, and yeah, she just had her show on Oxygen, and I just love to see her career taking off. That makes me really happy.
Me too. And
Yeah.
she just has a wealth of knowledge to pass on to others. So,
Yes.
like that death investigator show she did, I was just like, addicted to it. I had to binge it because I'm like, oh, learn more. Give me more ideas. So,
Absolutely. So let's talk about your first death case and autopsy. What was that like for you?
I still remember the first death scene I went to. It wasn't a homicide, it was a natural
Okay.
death, but it was an older woman and she'd been in her apartment for several days before she was found.
Oof.
And so I don't remember who I went to the scene with, which investigator, but I remember them kind of warning me like, okay, it's gonna smell and
Yeah.
and I was like, well, this will be an interesting test for my stomach, I guess. I mean, I
Yes.
felt like I would be fine, but you never know, right?
Right.
So, anyways, we go in. Well, the smell that was so bad. I guess this is a common thing. The cops that responded to the scene found some coffee grounds and put them in a pot on the stove and to burn them,
Okay.
which I thought that smell was worse than the
It's gonna make it
decomp
worse.
smell.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
Oh, it was awful. I'm like, God. So, anyways, the decomp, I mean, it didn't bother me at all, actually. So, I
Really?
mean, it doesn't smell good, but it didn't affect me.
Yeah, you're
So,
not gonna go out and buy a candle with that scent. Yeah, that's for
no,
sure.
but that was a good test, like I said. I'm like, okay, I can do this. So, and she was very green,
Oh,
this woman. So, but yeah, over time, like the investigators really let me help with about everything. They kind of treated me like an equal, like as a
yeah.
helper, really. But they didn't say, oh, all you can do is take photos. I would do the photos, but then they taught me, about rolling the body and taking the temperature, which back then was rectal, and how to bag them up and bag their hands if you need to and stuff like
Yep.
that. Um, and kind of like do an assessment of the scene. I remember this one homicide we went to. It was a crazy scene in this apartment. I can't even describe the chaos of how everything in this apartment was upended. I mean, I can't even imagine the level of fight that went on. And then ultimately, the guy was found in the bathroom with the shower head hose wrapped around his neck. But he had other all kind like I think he'd also been stabbed. And the scene was just chaotic. But something I noticed, I'm like, okay, or I asked the cop, sorry, I asked the responding officer, I was like, was the door locked when we got here? And he goes, yeah, we had to get the building super to come unlock the door. So I'm like, and they just said the deadbolt was locked. And I'm like,
The
okay.
deadbolt
So I
was
start
okay.
looking around and I see a set of keys in this mess. I didn't touch them or anything, but I was like, well, here's a set of keys. I'm betting that's the deceased's keys, which would mean somebody else has a key. And it turned out it was like his partner or something. They had gotten this huge altercation and
I
he
was going to
killed
say
him.
somebody that he knows, or maybe the fire escape. In New
Yeah.
York, sometimes
So,
people those are
yep.
fairly easily accessible.
Just little things like, okay, but we were way too high for him to have used the fire escape. We were
Oh,
like on
okay.
the 30th floor or something like
Ah,
that.
okay, okay.
So anyway, it's just like little things you start learning and things to want to observe at scenes and stuff like that. It was just really fascinating. Of course, every scene is different.
Yep,
So I felt like I was learning something every single day, every scene we went to.
that is so cool.
So,
Now,
yeah,
when did you get to see your first autopsy?
pretty quickly they're like, you can come whenever you want. So a lot of times especially if it was a homicide, like I was at the scene, then the next day they would do the autopsy. So I
Right.
would try to go in for the autopsy, just kind of put the two and two together. And having been at the scene, then I wanted to, see what the medical examiner found with the body and learn that way. Autopsies are fascinating, but I told my parents, I'm like, don't ever have an autopsy if you can help it,
Yeah.
because they kind of just take a soup ladle and scoop your insides out, and your brain doesn't go back in your skull, and like it's pretty gruesome. Um, but the body is like the best piece of evidence, so
Oh, absolutely, it is.
that's what I always focused on it, and it didn't bother me again to see what goes on in an autopsy. I was just really focused on like, okay, what are we going to learn? What's the body going to tell us? What clues do we get?
I don't know
So
what
I can't
the
remember my exact first autopsy, but I went to
okay.
lots of them. Yeah.
Now, I don't I don't know what it's like in New York, but I know here, the morgue is kind of just it's an icky place. I don't know how people work there all day long. First the smell is just gross. And I just get the creeps every time I'd walk in there. I'm like, ugh.
Really?
Yes, every time. And I'm just like, I tried to avoid that place like the plague if I could.
Yeah.
Just, I did not like it. Ugh. So
Understood. Yeah.
after
It
all of
was,
that, is that when you joined the army?
yeah, after I got my master's and I was still want to go FBI, and they're still like, well, you don't really have any experience. Like, go be a cop or join the military. So I weighed the two. And I decided the military would be a better route. I could get a top secret clearance. I
Mm.
knew I could get some investigative experience based on the job that I picked to do. And that's what I was looking for, something related to investigations, even if it wasn't homicide.
Did
Um,
NYPD try to pick you up as far as, hey, you know
mhm.
what? You might be a good candidate
Not that I remember. I don't think they ever approached me.
because
Um,
because you're interacting with the detectives,
sure.
as
Yeah.
an investigator, you're supposed
Yeah.
to work in harmony, or as close to harmony as
Yeah.
possible. Yeah, and I would think that, hey, you know what? Here she's working on her master's. Obviously, this stuff doesn't affect her. She's got a good head on her shoulders. I mean, you'd be a good candidate.
Yeah, I would have been. I don't know why it didn't really cross my mind. I actually wanted to be a death investigator. Like after that whole experience, I was like, I love this. But at the time in New York, at the chief medical examiner at the time, to be an investigator, you had to have a physician's assistant degree. And I'm like, I
Holy
cannot
cow!
afford to go back to college for another 2 full years. And
Yeah.
I wasn't sure I would pass all the medical stuff. I mean, I find the medical side fascinating, but I'm not like chemistry. I'm horrible at. I did not pass it in high school. I don't think I would pass it now. Like, so I wasn't sure I would
Me
make it
too.
anyways.
But couldn't you just say, "Hey, my mom's a nurse"?
I know
That should
exactly.
count for
Doesn't
something.
that count for something? Right.
Oh, so you joined the army. Why the
Yep.
army? Why not another branch?
I looked at the Air Force. They actually weren't very interested in me. Um,
Hmm.
and so then I talked to an Army recruiter and I told him what my goals were. And we looked through different job descriptions,
Yeah,
because when you go enlisted, which I did not go in as an officer.
that was
When
my
you go
next
enlisted,
question. Why not?
because so when you go in as an officer, which I was going to do, but you're at the needs of the Army and you don't get to pick what you're going to do.
Oh, okay, okay,
I
okay.
really appreciated my recruiter. He was really honest. He's like,
Wow,
and he
that's
was
a
super
rarity.
excited because he thought I was going to be his first officer
Yeah.
that he would send in. But anyway, but he was honest. He's like, you're be at the needs of the Army. You could end up running a motor pool. And I'm like, no, like I want military intelligence. And he's like, I can't guarantee that.
Okay.
But he's like, but if you go enlisted, I can, and you'll pick your
Wow.
job. So that was an easy decision right there. And it was the best decision because I don't mind leading troops and I did as a sergeant, but I would not want to be a manager all the time. Like I like the boots on the ground, beating the street, so to speak, whatever cliche you want to use.
Sure.
So I went counter as a counterintelligence agent because along with that job, you get a top secret clearance, and counterintelligence is an investigative type position. So, and that's obviously what I was looking for. And it was like the best decision of my life. I mean, it was a great career path to start on. I got so much awesome training, all for free,
Right.
interrogate all different interrogation type training and interview and, running human sources. And I think it really it gave me such a good baseline for my future because you're working with humans on a regular basis, right? And
Yeah.
humans are complicated and you have to read them and you have to figure out what their motivation is and stuff. So it was a great choice, I think, on my part.
How many years did you sign up for?
Five. I did five.
Okay.
My plan, so I kind of got screwed, I guess you could say. So I volunteered to deploy to Iraq in '04 and '05. My contract was up in October of '05. I got back from Iraq about 6 months prior. I missed my window while I was in Iraq to become an E6. And because of that, I was not eligible for anything I wanted to reenlist, namely to go to warrant officer school. I wanted to reenlist and that be put in my contract for my next enlistment to go to become a warrant officer, which is kind of the best of both worlds. You are an officer, but you're still in your specialty, and that's still what you do.
Okay.
But they couldn't offer it to me because I wasn't an E6. And I'm like,
Uh,
what about duty station of choice? Nope, you're not an
really?
E6. Like reenlistment bonus? Nope. There is literally not one thing they would offer. And I'm
Because you were
like,
serving your country overseas in a war
yeah.
zone. I
I'm
mean,
like, it's
come
not
on.
my fault. And they're like, well, you can just extend for another year and go to the E6 board. And I was like, no. And I really hated the duty station I was at. Or not the duty station, but I was at what's called a special mission unit, but I really hated the stateside job aspect of it. And I was like, I'm not staying, I can't stay here another like year
Where
and a
was
half,
it?
two. I can't name it.
Uh,
But it was while I was stateside, it was a very mundane data entry, boring position at a laptop. Um, Over in Iraq, I had a different job and it was awesome. I loved
yeah.
it. Um, so I was like weighing all these options. I'm like, well, this sucks. Like, you would think they'd want me to stay in the military. Like,
They invested because just getting somebody a top secret
exactly.
clearance, it costs money to do that. All of that costs money.
Tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah.
Yes. You would, but the government doesn't make any sense at all.
No, they don't.
I just got
Wouldn't
to
you know,
take,
a few years later, when I went to Afghanistan as a contractor, they were dying for E5 counterintelligence agents.
ah,
They were so short. Like, okay, you guys don't make any sense. But anyways, in the meantime, I had applied for this other job that was focused heavily on force protection and threat assessment, which is also part of counterintelligence. It's like trying to figure out what your enemy knows about you or your adversary and thwarting that threat. So I applied for this government contractor job doing that type of thing around the world, and I got a job offer for that team.
was that
So I was
Blackwater
kind of
or
like,
what?
okay, maybe this is what's meant to be.
Yeah, was that Blackwater or what?
No, we ultimately ended up under BAE systems.
Hmm,
We were like this, it was about 80 or 90 small team that originally started under CIFA when that was in existence, the counterintelligence field activity. And then they went away. So we fell under Department of Defense, but then they wanted us under like a civilian company so that we
okay.
weren't known and all this cloak and dagger sounding stuff. But anyway, um, and it was a good job. I mean, we would, based on threat reporting and stuff, we'd go to locations around the world and we were usually there 6 to 8 weeks to do a full threat assessment of usually a US facility. But sometimes we were actually analyzing routes that troops were taking, like to move equipment.
Sure.
And we would figure out like the safest route with the least amount of threats and ambush points and stuff like that. And so we'd do these elaborate reports and PowerPoints and presentations and stuff. to the local commanders on this is your best option for this, that, and the other. And then we would also, if they wanted, we could advise them on how to strengthen their security, if
Sure.
we were doing a facility or so it was pretty interesting. Got to go all over the place. Kuwait was the worst.
Okay.
Ended up there about 3 times. But knowing that we're in support of the security of US troops, like it was a pretty rewarding job.
So when
Um,
you were for in the army in Iraq, what was the duties? You're a counterintelligence officer, which does sound very James Bondish, by the
it's not
way.
quite that sexy.
So what would your day look like? What would you be doing?
The first thing I would do in the morning, get up, go work out, and then I would give our unit the daily threat briefing. So I would go through the intel reports from the day prior and like any attacks that had happened. Okay, so let me back up. I was stationed in the green zone in Baghdad, but I was outside the wire almost every single day that I was there, which I'll explain in a minute. But so I would get these intel reports from the different agencies that I liaisoned with, and that's one part of my job was like doing liaison with other counterintelligence personnel from the CIA, FBI, the embassy, the other military units that were in the local area. Like make sure I have all those connections. I know who's who, and if I need something from a certain agency, I know who to go to.
Mm,
So I compile the intel reports, and then we had a giant map where I would do a briefing and I'd show where attacks had been the day prior and like if there was chatter on potential attacks, put out that information because most of our people were out running outside the wire every single day. But another thing I did when I got there, everybody, when they would go over to the airport area where there was two big bases, they would all drive what's called Route Irish, the main airport road between the green zone and the airport. It's about a 4 mile stretch. But that road was getting blown up like every single day. I mean, it was
oh,
awful. Almost every time you ran down it, you'd see blown up SUVs because either them or the military vehicles were really easy to pick out for the insurgents and target. And so I was studying the map and I'm like, there's got to be other ways to get from the
yeah.
green zone to the airport. Maybe it's not as direct. And so I found like not too many people were thrilled about this idea, but I found a couple people who were willing to go out, like I think on a Sunday on our day off and explore some other routes around town. And I actually think we were safer because we were in low profile vehicles, meaning we weren't in big SUVs, we
Mm,
weren't in military Humvees. We're just in locally acquired cars. And people get alarmed by this because they weren't up armored. But at the same point, like we would put headscarves on, the women would
yeah.
take our sunglasses off because that's a giveaway. And we would cruise around like nobody thought anything about us. So it was
Okay.
actually a much better way to blend in
Yeah.
and not be targeted. And
Sure.
so I found some people that would go out with me when we had downtime and like explore other routes. And eventually I came up with 2 or 3 alternate routes to not use Route Irish to get to the airport. And a lot of the others actually ended up adopting those routes to use because they realized, yeah, this actually is safer.
Oh yeah.
The insurgents aren't over in this area, on the side streets. So things like that. I actually somehow fell into kind of a logistics person too. Like, I guess because I was running back and forth between bases, I was often delivering like classified documents and stuff. So we had teams out lying in different places around the country that needed supplies. So I ended up, making friends with the Marines that had a chopper that would go to some of these bases or areas and they would deliver supplies for us. So I would kind of coordinated some of that logistics piece too. Um, so there was a lot of stuff going on. I just loved it. It was like just go do your job. No
Yeah.
one was bothering you about formations and all this stuff.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, so
Were you in uniform much or not?
no, not at all. No,
Wow.
civilian clothes.
Wow. But you were still a member of the army and you had
Yes.
rank,
Yeah.
but you didn't have to
And,
work civilian. I mean,
correct. We
wow.
we were armed, of course, we went out armed and we had vests, but we
Yeah.
would put shirts over our vests so it wouldn't be obvious
Right.
when we were driving around that we were Americans.
Damn.
Never had any trouble. Like no,
Wow.
while I was there, nobody from our unit got attacked while out on the road. We did have an interpreter who was in it's called the Green Zone Cafe, I think, little food place
Yeah.
inside the Green Zone, and it got blown up by a suicide bomber, and one of
Oh,
our interpreters was in the restaurant, and he got severely injured and had to be medevac to the US, but he made it. He was
oh,
okay in the end.
wow.
But that was the only injury that we had during my time there.
Did you do much as far as interviews and interrogations?
Not a whole lot. I did help with running of sources. So like some of our people there were from a certain government agency
That
that
rhymes with CIA. Okay, gotcha.
it rhymes with CIA.
Yeah.
Not actually the agency, it's a different one, but
Okay.
they would officially be running human sources. And sometimes I would go, if they needed a second person, I'd go with them to talk to their source. And there was a couple what we call low-level sources that ended up getting handed over to me from my predecessor that I would meet with like once a month.
So what's a
Um,
source for those who don't know?
so we worked with human sources. So for counterintelligence, a big part of it is looking for people that have access, placement and access, we call it, to information about the adversary and what the adversary may know or be planning.
So we would call that
Um,
a CI where I worked.
yes, basically a confidential informant.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
law enforcement speak. Yep.
So
And
what is their motivation for helping you?
it differs, and that's what we have to figure out with each individual person is
Yeah.
what is going to motivate them to report to you. Is it money? Is it safety? Is it getting them a better job? Like it
Mm.
just differs from one person to the next, and you're not always going to be successful in recruiting a source. Like you might find the perfect person, and then they're like, no way. And
Ah,
you have to be careful with that too, because if they say no way, they may go back to the insurgency and tell them, hey, by the way,
right.
these people over here are actually working for the agency, or whatever. So,
Did you ever personally or hear of, like double agents that were kind of
oh
working both
yeah,
sides of the
I
fence?
yeah, I mean in Afghanistan, there's a movie based on it and everything where um, the I can't remember the name of the guy, but the actual CIA over there had recruited a guy that they thought was on the up and up, and he wasn't. And he came onto their base. The CIA officer who was in charge there allowed his vehicle to come through unsearched, and he had a suicide vest on, and I
Oh
think killed
shit.
5 agents or something
Wow.
in that
Now,
event.
you were you trained in interrogation and interview?
Yeah. hmm
Okay. So, and I'm
Did a
sure
lot more of that in Afghanistan.
okay. So
Yeah.
either Afghanistan or Iraq, I mean, if you were a part of or, like a witness to or etc. I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff. How much weight do you put into, body language, micro expressions, volume and tone fluctuations, in your voice?
It's
Y-
important. It's all important. Yeah.
Can you give
Um,
some quick examples or?
let's see. I can think of one. Um,
Well, you think, oh, like crossing your arms, shifty
sure.
eyes, what
Yeah.
does that mean to you?
Yeah. So if you've got someone who so current day, I work at my sheriff's office, which we'll get into that later. And
Yeah.
I do a lot, I watch a lot of interviews there, and sometimes I'll be the one conducting them. But I can almost tell when someone's done the thing that they've been arrested for, they're being questioned about because they're trying to like get themselves as far away from
Yeah.
the interviewer as possible, like scrunch themselves into a corner, basically. And literally, sometimes they'll put their knees up to their chest in the chair, and their arms will be tight into their chest, and it's like you're just giving yourself away at that point.
What do you think about,
Um,
like, somebody, it was always funny. It's like, hey, Jen, why would I tell you if, I have a pistol with your fingerprints on it and your alibi doesn't, check out. Either it's going to be like silence or, oh my God,
yeah,
God, like God comes in there out of nowhere,
yeah,
what do
yeah.
you,
I swear to God.
yeah, exactly. It's like, what do you think about that?
I think when they bring in the God part, that's often a giveaway as well.
Yes.
Um, at least in the US, on behalf of Americans, I mean, things differ when you're overseas and you're dealing with different cultures. But yeah, I swear to God, I like the term overselling when someone's trying to oversell
Hmm.
their innocence. It's like if you're actually innocent, you don't need to do that. You don't need to swear to God. You don't
Yeah.
need to swear on a Bible or your mother's grave
Yeah.
or any of that. You're just trying to oversell your story. And I'm pretty good at picking up on inconsistencies too, because if you're lying, you can't remember every detail you lied about.
No, you
So
can't. It's hard to lie. It
It is.
that's
And so if you ask them, I always get someone, stick them to their, tell me whatever story you want to tell me. Get it out. Give me your story, whatever it's going to be. And then you start picking away at it, make them retell it in different ways. And if they're lying, like it becomes pretty obvious because they
yeah.
just can't keep all the details straight.
I remember I went to a class, on interview interrogation. It's like go backwards, start from the time of
Yeah,
the incident and go backwards
there you
24
go.
hours. And it's like, and but first ask them like normally. It's like okay, tell me about how did your day start yesterday? Blah blah
Yeah.
blah, and you go through it. It's like oh, then you BS for a while, and it's like let's go backwards. And there's like, Roro, that's
Yep.
not easy.
No. And if there's a huge gap in time that they skip over, that's usually the time when the incident occurred.
Yes, yeah,
They'll,
absolutely.
they'll be super detailed about, oh, I brushed my teeth and I put my pants on and my shirt and I comb my hair and then later in the day I went to Target and I did some shopping. You're like, hang on, wait a minute. I know you
Yeah,
did more between brushing your hair and going to Target at 4 in the afternoon, So they always want to jump over the time
yes.
period in which the incident occurred.
Oh yeah, and thank God, most criminals are not masterminds. You don't need
No,
Sherlock Holmes for this kind of stuff for the
right.
most part. For the most part. Now,
Yeah.
say you're in Afghanistan or Iraq, what's the difference when you're trying to interrogate somebody there, or is there much of a difference?
Oh, there's a difference because you have to use an
That
interpreter.
would be tough because you're not picking up on certain like fluctuations or there's nicknames or stuff with language that you're that's going to get lost in translation literally.
There's advantages and disadvantages. So
Okay, tell me about it.
yeah. So thankfully, for the most part, we had excellent interpreters who were very good at letting us know when they picked up on some kind of inconsistency or a lie or whatever. Um, the another advantage of using an interpreter is you get time to think, right? So like
Mm,
when I'm interviewing somebody or interrogating them in English and they're speaking English, you're always trying to think ahead. Okay, but it's
right.
very difficult. You don't have much time, right? You're playing all these mental gymnastics. With an interpreter, it gives you that extra period of time
Oh, I never
to
thought of that.
think.
Yeah, that's
Yep,
cool.
that's actually an advantage in my eyes. You can slow your brain slows down a little bit because you have a little more time to figure out what your strategy is going to be.
Wow.
But yeah, I can't, the language barrier, there's certain things that I personally just I'm never going to be able to pick up on. But the body language thing is still relevant. Different cultures have different body languages, I guess you can say, but you
Mm,
learn those over time. Um, and a lot of people always, so I only interviewed males in Afghanistan because the women weren't allowed to work, and my team was tasked with interviewing and vetting all the people that wanted jobs on the base. But
mm,
secondarily to that, which they didn't know, is that we're looking for sources
sure.
who or people who could possibly become human sources for the counterintelligence team to report on, the Taliban and the insurgents in the area. So again, we were part of the process of spotting and assessing and figuring out, do these people live in an area where there might be information that they're privy to? And so my favorite question to figure this out, because if I asked them, hey, is there any insurgents in your neighborhood? 100% will say, no, no, there's no problems. I just won't be like, yeah, why are we here then? But
Yeah.
anyway, so I learned, I'm like, okay, so a better way to figure this out is I would ask these guys, so if I was to walk down the street in your neighborhood, what would happen to me? And most of them would be like, their eyes would get all big, like, what? They're like, you can't do that. And mainly because I'm a female and I'm not
Right.
supposed to be out by myself. And I'm like, just pretend, okay, I know in your culture, I'm not supposed to do that, but let's just pretend I did. What would happen? And then that's when you kind of get the truth, like, oh no, you would not be safe. You would be kidnapped. You would be. So then you get a tip, like,
Mm,
okay, so there are some bad guys in this neighborhood. So it was interesting learning along the way how to rephrase your questions to try to get the information you're
gotcha.
looking for because the direct questioning with them in Afghanistan didn't work very well. So you had to find creative ways to kind of get information from them.
That's neat. I that's some
Yeah.
stuff I never even thought of. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. How long were you there?
I was there for 14 months.
Okay.
I did over 500 interviews and I actually wrote a book on it. This is my first book. So and I never had a professional editor, so
What's it
don't
called?
judge too much. But I started keeping track of interesting quotes from some of these guys.
Oh, cool.
And in the end, I had like this whole, I had pages and pages of quotes. And so I
Yeah,
was like, what can I do with these? Like these all tell an interesting story.
right.
I kind of grouped them into different categories. And then each chapter of my book is on a different topic.
What's the title of the
Uh,
book?
it's called There Is No Goat.
There is no
You got to
goat.
read it to figure out what the title means.
Is that on Amazon?
It is, yep. You can get it in Kindle or paperback.
Okay, I guess I know what I'm
Um,
going to be buying. All right.
and what was super interesting over there is how many of the locals had no idea about 9/11 and or
What?
Osama bin Laden. I'm not,
Really?
there's a whole chapter on that in the book, but
They didn't.
yeah, I would ask them, so why are we here? Why do you think the Americans are here? And so many of them were like, to give us jobs. I'm like, have you ever heard of Osama bin Laden? No. You ever heard of 9/11? No. So I'd go get my laptop and I'd show them videos of the planes crashing into the World Trade Center and stuff. And they would just sit there like with their eyes just wide open. They'd never heard of it, never seen it before. It was insane. I'm like, how are we this close to Pakistan? Like we're on the border where I'm at.
Wow.
And that's just how close that culture was. They just had no outside influence or media or anything. It was astounding.
That is, yeah, that'd be like me not knowing about Pearl Harbor. That would
Yeah.
be, yeah, it just,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazyville. I mean, that's
Yeah.
nuts. So you were in Iraq doing this stuff, then you got out of the army, then you went to a civilian contractor,
Hmm.
doing pretty much the same thing in Afghanistan. And God, it must have broke your heart when you saw how we pulled out of Afghanistan.
It did. That
Oh
was
my
awful.
God.
I don't know what the right answer is, but that was not it.
No,
That was
and
really
we just
unfair.
screwed over those. You were talking
Yeah.
about the value of the interpreters and our
Yeah.
assets. We just totally screwed them over.
Why did we even go if that's how we were just going to leave? And like one of my interpreters, his sponsor, they call it, the guy he directly worked for, but this interpreter helped me at times. He's still stuck over there. And
Oh,
like we've been fighting for 10 years to try to get him a visa to the US, and
yes.
they keep just finding one excuse after another to deny it. And
Oh my
it's
God.
heartbreaking because he'll message me on WhatsApp and
Well,
periodically
and the
talk
problem
about
with that is the way we withdrew, and I mean, obviously the optics were horrific, but
yeah.
any time we have any kind of operation overseas, people are going to be thinking, it's like, why should we trust you? Look what you did in
Mhm. I
Afghanistan.
know
Is for,
exactly.
it's like all you have to do is look at history, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
so that's how you treat your assets. Okay,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get it. Why would I?
Exactly.
Why would I be your friend?
Yeah.
Just oh,
I mean, and it was just heartbreaking watching them running down
oh,
the taxiway after the airplane. I mean, it was just
yeah,
it was awful.
and us not destroying it. If you're not going to take all that military equipment, destroy it.
That too. So great. Now the Taliban's got all that stuff
Yeah,
too.
exactly. I
It's
mean,
back to how it was. It was like we were never there. I'm like, no, that
but
was great
it just
waste of
seems
money.
like it's common sense.
Yeah.
Like I said, if it's too much of a logistical nightmare to like haul all that stuff away, or you're kind of tipping your hand, whatever, blow the shit up, get rid of it,
Yeah. I know.
destroy
But we
it.
got it over there. Why can't we get some of it back home? I mean, I don't
Yeah,
understand.
you would think,
Yeah.
but
I know.
that's another topic for another
I
day,
know.
I guess. But yeah,
That's a
it
whole nother
just
discussion.
that my brain exploded when that first happened. I'm just like,
Yeah.
are you effing kidding me?
Me too.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I hate to talk politics and all that, but it's like I know you're semi brain dead. This just proves that you are completely brain dead. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's just like this is elder abuse. You should not be doing this job,
Yeah.
period. End of story.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Agreed.
whatever. But yeah, I was surprised that you didn't segue to like CIA or NSA with all this experience.
Well, remember back at the beginning how I wanted to go FBI?
Yes.
I was partway through the process with the FBI when I got out of the Army. And then I started having trouble running. My heart rate was like over 200. I'm like, what the
Holy
hell's,
cow.
yeah, what in the world's going on? And I was just like, and I was always a very good runner.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I just turned 30. I'm like, maybe this is what 30 looks like. I just can't
I
run
hope
fast.
not.
Looking back now, I'm like, no, that's, but I was like, what's going on? I was struggling and I was just like huffing and puffing. I would have to stop all the time, like, what in the world? And so they sent me to like a cardiologist who wanted me to go on heart medication. And I'm like, no. And it was actually my husband. He's like, I wonder if it has to do with your sternum. So I was born with a concave sternum.
Okay.
It's called pectus excavatum. It obviously never bothered me growing up. I played sports.
Yeah.
The Army did deny me the first time I tried to go in because of it, and then they gave me an exception the second time.
I mean, but you went through
But my
basic training.
sternum,
That's a lot of physical exercise.
yeah, but my sternum touched my heart back
Oh,
then, and that, so in theory, you're at an increased risk of your heart stopping if you get hit in the chest.
okay.
Anyways, obviously that never happened. I didn't have any trouble with the Army, but I guess around 30, your bones just, that cartilage is no longer flexible and your rib cage doesn't flex as well. And so the problem was that my sternum was not allowing my heart to expand properly. So one of my chambers was basically being squished
Ooh.
and it had actually forced my heart to shift left,
Oh,
um,
it's just moving
out
around
of
in
its
there.
abnormal spot. And so I had all these problems. So they finally figure out what the problem is, right? So I
Yeah.
go to this specialist out in California who's like the best in the country for this fixing this problem. And he's like, well, not only are you my oldest, will you be my oldest patient, but you have the most severe case I've ever seen.
Wow.
And I said, well, I want to go in the FBI. And he didn't laugh, but he's just like, you're never gonna do that. He's like, you don't have to fix this. You can leave it as is, but your exercise tolerance is going to continue to go down. And he's like, you're at way increased chance of a stroke later in life because of this one chamber not being able to expand. So blood is pooling in there and blah, blah,
Ugh.
blah. So I was like, okay, fix it. He's like, I can fix it, so to speak. But he's like, you're never going to be able to do law enforcement either way. He's like, obviously you can't do it now because you can't pass the physical running part.
Right.
He's like, and when I do fix you, you're because he had to remove all the cartilage between my ribs and my sternum, and it had to regrow over a 3 to 5 year period on its
Oh,
own. And he's
God.
like, your whole rib cage is just not strong, and you
Yeah.
cannot take a risk of anything. And he's like, in fact, like if you ever get hit with an airbag, you're going to be back in my operating room probably.
Wow.
So I always try to sit in the back seat
Okay.
if I can.
Like you're being
Um,
chauffeured around. Yeah,
yeah,
that's your
right.
husband's job.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's why I couldn't go traditional law enforcement. It just wasn't, I just couldn't.
You
So
know,
I had to obviously figured out an alternate. It
that's
was a
unfortunate.
little crushing, but
Yeah,
I'm happy where I ended up.
it's unfortunate because as an FBI special agent, unless you're on the hurt team or the SWAT team or doing like high speed stuff, you're not fighting with bad guys. That's not an
Correct.
FBI agent's job. You're not running down a dark alley at 2 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
after a drug dealer. It's just not happening.
It's more the training you have to pass is the
Okay.
problem. So like the self-defense. And then like when I went through the Academy for Department of Corrections, we did part of self-defense. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but like there were times where you had to go from a standing position and fall forward onto your forearms.
Yeah.
And he's like, you can never do anything like that. That's way too much force on
Gotcha.
your chest and your rib cage. So it's more the training that I wasn't going to be able to pass than the
Oh,
job itself.
that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, like I said before, it just that's unfortunate because you'd be the perfect candidate for that job.
I thought so.
Yeah, you would be. I mean, hands down. I've known plenty of FBI agents, and I interview plenty of them, and just knowing you the little amount of time with your pedigree, and just the way you can verbalize, the way you could talk, the way you can. I mean, that's 90% of the job, for God's
Mhm.
sakes. So,
Yeah,
uh,
it
that's
is what it
rough.
is.
It is. I tried when I was in college. We had career day, and all the different places had their little tents set up and their desks, and the FBI. I'm like, that's cool. I've got a minor in criminal justice. I did the internship. I'm like, that's pretty high speed. So they're like, what's your major? And I'm like, it's sociology, and my minor is criminal justice. No, thank you. We don't want cops. And I was like,
Like
what?
that.
We want accountants and we want lawyers.
Yeah.
We don't
Yep.
want you. And I'm like, okay, point taken. So
Yeah.
scratch that off the list. Of like, all right, I didn't have my heart set on it, so I'm like, okay, I'll be a
Yeah.
flatfoot somewhere. I can do that. So,
I think the route you took was much more suited for you. So,
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So post-military life, and then the contracting. Then where did you go after all that?
um, after contracting, I was finished. I actually went back to school for a second master's in forensic science this time, which is what I really enjoy. And then I got a job teaching forensics and criminal justice at American Military University in 2012.
Where's that?
So I taught for them. After a few years, I also got my PI license here in Colorado. I was doing some not really investigative stuff, but more like security, like I guess you call it like far out perimeter security type threat assessment stuff for
Okay.
some high level rich people.
Okay.
But it was interesting. That wasn't a bad job. Did some contracts like that. I taught terrorism class for Colorado State University for a while, but then when COVID hit, they laid off all their adjunct professors,
Mm.
so lost that one. But that was a really fun class to teach. And then I was working with the State Department doing curriculum development for a training program for Indonesian police officers
Oh,
who were working for their anti-terrorism unit in Indonesia.
okay.
Loved that job. I got to help create the curriculum and then I would go over to Indonesia and teach it.
Oh, wow.
And it was just fun. It was just a hands-on job. You get to work with actual police officers who are really motivated to learn from you. The surveillance course we developed was my favorite. That's all. My background's very surveillance heavy also from that force protection job.
Yeah.
And so they were always, it was funny teaching surveillance to these guys because most of them have never left Indonesia and they're just like, I'm tall, by the way, I'm like 5'11", and they're just like, how could you ever blend in? I'm like,
Yeah.
well, if you ever went to Germany or the Netherlands or anywhere in Europe, you would see why I can blend in just fine. Anyways, but yeah, so we would do surveillance exercises where, they'd have a person to follow and then we would be, and the instructors kind of be in the periphery watching their behavior and, did they look alerting or did they look natural? And we taught them how to fit in and how to change clothes on the go and stuff like that. So that was a really awesome job. It was great because we'd go to Indonesia for 30 days and we'd come home for like 3 months and then go
Oh,
back for
okay.
30 days and come home. So it was a really good balance of a little bit of travel and then being home. Excuse me. But then COVID and the State Department, no one was allowed to travel. The State Department had to temporarily halt the program basically because we couldn't go over there. And so then that's when I found an opening for civilian criminal investigator at my local sheriff's office. And so I applied for that and got that. And that's where I've been ever since. And I love
Oh,
it. I work cold cases.
okay.
And it is just probably my favorite all-time job. I wish I could have found it like 20 years ago, but I'll take it.
Oh, okay.